The living room, where the family meets to discuss issues, any issue which may be bothering one of the family members. That's what we do each and every Tuesday from 7 to 8 p.m. on WAC 90.1 FM with Ricardo Mitchell and DJ Aaron 868. We have casual conversations on serious topics, from sports to culture, mental health to economics, relationships to life lessons. Join us each and every Tuesday from 7 to 8 p.m. on WAC 90.1 FM. The Living Room, casual conversations on serious topics.
It is the 19th of October 2021, and it is currently a couple of minutes after 6 p.m. here in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't know what time it is where you are, but I'm glad to know you are locked on to the True Nation station, WACK 90.1 FM, where we are
ultra crazy.
What time that what saying?
Skin past bone and quarter to flesh, man.
You know, allow me to hear somebody say that. Right? If you don't know the voices by now, this is yours truly, DJ Aaron 868. I'm always great and I'm never late, alongside my brother from another mother,
Ricardo Mitchell, the social stage and the local stage.
And I think I speed a little bit, so like pull it back. First and foremost, must say thanks and praises to the Almighty for granting us the gift of life and seeing another day. No matter what time of day it is, you must always
give thanks.
Secondly, must say thank you to those that went before us, not just the ancestors, but also to Tony P. And the P this week stands for
positivity.
We didn't even go and ask the explanation because you all will hear that in tonight's program. Before we hang our hat and wipe our feet, I want to do this publicly. I want to say happy anniversary to my parents.
Woo!
Right? Yeah, just want to say that there. Can't tell you how long, because then only start a question and whole set of other things.
Don't.
Yeah, right. But happy anniversary, mommy and daddy.
Happy anniversary, guys.
Yeah. So I had to hang my hat this week.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
I want to hang my hat to our athletes in the various disciplines, right? Who continue to train during this pandemic and excel, who continue to train during this pandemic and put their best foot forward in competitions, right? When we are training with not the full capacity and other nations are full steam ahead, right? So I just want to shout out to our athletes and let you all know that the World Cricket T20 is kicking off. So if you can't take stress, don't watch West Indies play.
Wow, man. Wow.
You see the first warm-up game yesterday?
No, but here the catch is a warm-up game. It's not like it be in the play-in part of the tournament.
I know, but just saying, if you see the first warm-up game.
No, I did not. But
I'll get them the running singles.
Hey, well, progress.
Wipe your feet now.
I want to wipe my feet on the Bacchanalist them. And no, not the Bacchanalist cow from Purple Cow. That is actually a pretty cool little test. I'm talking about the Trinbagonians who take things and run. Taking things and running. Inciting unrest and panic and just carrying information out of context and so on and so forth. Apparently there was an incident still under investigation, but according to the TTPS release, right, no buildings were shot at. The broken glass that you saw in the ministerial building, sorry, I think it's the AG office or one of them thing. It was a stress crack. It was not that somebody shot at the building, right? Yes, there may have been. There was reports of an explosion in Port of Spain. It's some form of fireworks or another that had been tampered with in a garbage bin. So it seems to be more mischievous than anything else. But some of the news reports that were coming out, and some of the information people was running with was uncalled for, right? It was uncalled for. And again, if you don't know, don't say nothing, man. Or at least ask a question, but don't purport to know. So for all the people who just like rab and bacchanal and comments and chaos are wiping my foot on here. I over that. I don't have enough time for that again.
I want to wipe my foot as well. Really
foot
quickly.
wipe. You foot wipe.
Here now. For the people who were happy to see that. Earlier. Right.
Right.
This is my stern face.
That's
The
just,
mic probably blocking it, but
that's a stone face.
and we are going to add to the mental health breast cancer awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Ricardo, introduce the guests. I'm going on top of some water in my lovely new mug.
Wow, Aaron. Wow. Yeah. While you're there, unlock the mezzanine now.
Oh, I'll do all that while outside. Yeah.
Nice. We have 2 guests this evening in the living room as we have a conversation about breast cancer. And not just breast cancer awareness, but about actual breast cancer. We have Dr. Nazreem Bhim, a clinical radiation oncologist trained at the University of Cape Town, South Africa, in the management of cancers of all disease sites using chemotherapy, radiation therapy, brachytherapy in adult patients, and also radiation therapy in pediatric patients. Special interests include brachytherapy and stereotactic radiation therapy, as well as palliative care. We gotta get into that, She is passionate about raising cancer awareness locally and committed to providing a high standard of care to all her patients and to supporting her patients and their families along this difficult journey. And evidence as to those points mentioned, we have Camille Tekah. Yeah, making sure I get that right. Yeah, Camille Tekah, who is a cancer survivor.
When I say we are joined by beauty, you introduce our guests already. And I just want them to say good evening to all the listeners of WAC 90.1 FM. Ladies, take it away.
Good evening to all your listeners of WAC 90.1 FM. This is the first time actually that I'm listening to this station.
Yes,
everyone.
Yeah, we have a first timer and a returning guest. So we're gonna kick it off with the easiest question in tonight's conversation, and don't rush all at once to answer us. Ladies, how are you?
So I'm doing fine. Thanks for inviting me back again, Ricardo and Aaron. Even though, as I said, I'm a little bit upset that I wasn't your first choice for tonight, but I'm still glad for the opportunity to be here. So definitely, for now, I wouldn't hold it against you. Aaron, definitely off the hook. Ricardo, me and you later. I will deal with you.
It was a different topic. It was for a different topic.
Yeah, so thanks so much for the opportunity to be here, but not only for me to be here, but for me to bring this lovely person with me today, Camille, who has been, all my patients I love and I learn so much from each person. But Camille has been one of my favorite, and there are many favorites. One of my favorite patients.
That's so nice to hear. So nice to hear.
I felt like she had a lot to share about a patient's experience going through this, because as doctors, we talk a lot, but it's always good to hear the other side of the story. And I felt like she had a lot to offer. So I'm glad that she was able to join us as well today. Camille?
Yes, I'm doing okay. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Don't mind it was last minute, but I just had to shift some things around and I'm here. So I'm a first-time listener and I'm raring to go. So thank you for having me again.
What I love most about this is the shade that has been thrown at the start of this program. I love how we have started.
Really?
Yes, I love it.
I wonder who's throwing that shade.
I'm not hearing Ricardo saying that he enjoying this,
So Ricardo, let's kick it off now. Let's start this casual conversation on this serious topic. As we are inside not just Mental Health Awareness Month, we are also inside Breast Cancer
Cancer Awareness Month, yeah.
Right? So Ricardo, take it away. Let's get down to the meat of the matter.
I knew when you came on to the program last year, right, for actually the same episode, when you came on, you had just gotten back from a stint in South Africa, right? And I'm not gonna tell people about what I see on your social media, but you were craving doubles. You were craving doubles, so I had a feeling you weren't here. So what adventure are you on right now? What have you been up to since you've been here last year?
Okay, so well, as you would know, and as you would have mentioned earlier, I did complete my residency in South Africa, and I have been back in Trinidad working both in public and private sector since round about August, September last year. I got a brilliant opportunity to pursue advanced radiation oncology techniques in MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston, Texas. So that's currently where I am. It's going to be where I am until next year, June.
Oh.
I'm still engaging at home, seeing my patients virtually because, as COVID has hit, it has given us these avenues to be able to see patients virtually. Mm-hmm. So a lot of patients I still interact with on that forum. So I'm still able to do a lot of my work at home, but I have really been away here focusing on advancing myself and advancing my training in certain techniques that I hope to bring back home and make a difference in the oncology care for patients in different areas, including gynae cancers and brachytherapy, stereotactic radiation. So it's been an exciting couple of months and lots more to go. So hoping that, it's one of those, as you said, I know you've been looking at my profile and you probably didn't like this picture, but to be at a center like this has actually been one of my dreams for a very long time. So I'm really glad to be a part of this center. And there's so much that's offered here that I feel like at home we can make such a big difference if we're able to implement and utilize. So it's an amazing opportunity, and I'm just so glad to be, doing this right now.
Yeah, that is.
Dr. Bhim, you've been very busy.
always busy.
And before Aaron interjects, I would just like to point out that one of the reasons we have such high caliber guests is because I do my is it research? Is it research to go through people, social media profiles?
Stalking.
Whatever.
Stalking. In this case, stalking and research can be used interchangeably.
That is a very harsh word to go to so quickly. You know what? Anyway, I'm going to be professional about this, Aaron, and not throw out words like that so callously. So I love the fact that you brought support this time, because support is a huge part of not just the process of discovering diagnosis and then treatment, but even the relationship that you guys clearly have right now is astonishing to me. I've always heard of doctor-patient confidentiality, but the idea of having a doctor and a patient come on with such a familiar relational energy.
It's just very strange because most doctors are very clinical. So they give you the information, they tell you what is happening, and in my experience, that's where it ends. That's it. You don't have a familiar face or a familiar platform with which to chat. But with Dr. Bhim, I call her Dr. Bhim. With Dr. Bhim, it's very familiar. But for me, most doctors are very clinical. Their bedside manner is very clinical. Cold in some instances, right? Cold in, but it's not so with Dr. Bhim. We had, conversations when I was in her office. Right? When I was going through my radiation treatment, we had lots of conversations in her office. I introduced her to recipes and all those different things while I was going through my treatment with her. So she is really, really a nice person.
For me, as Camille says, the patients come to me for clinical advice, right? And it's always for me, I try my best to make sure that my patients understand their options. So, I always say there are many ways to make a broth because Camille and I love cooking. So there are many ways to make a broth. And if you go to different doctors, everybody has a different recipe. And what I would like to present to my patients is that I want them to know that, there's not always one way to approach a particular treatment plan or treatment strategy. And I like my patients to understand why it is that we're doing what we're doing. And another big part of it for me is that, I love meeting people. I love interacting with people in general. Thanks to Camille, I now have an amazing recipe for cooking eggplant that I didn't have before. So you learn something from everyone. There's so many ways that you can interact. And that's the point really for us to be able to interact with each other and build meaningful relationships. Because cancer treatment, the cancer walk is not only about the treatment, it's about the entire experience. And, if I could be part of the support system, whether it's sharing a joke, sharing a recipe, and not that you walk into my office and the only thing you could think about is chemo and radiation, then that way, it makes our relationship better. And the patient's experience from up there, it makes, to me at least, it makes me feel like if their experience is better.
Yeah, because it is very scary. When you hear the word cancer, it is very scary, right? And sometimes you don't know where to turn, who to talk to, what to do next, right? So when you get that initial diagnosis in the office, I mean, some people break down, some people cry, some people scream. Me, I laughed, right? Because I had been through so much already. For me, it was like, Lord, what next? Right? So what next? I laughed, right? So but it is a scary, very, very scary experience to go through. And especially if you don't have a support system, or, you don't have people to speak with, it can be very, very scary. So that was my experience with it. But it wasn't, at the end of it, it really wasn't that scary, right? It's not the end, because a lot of people feel that from the time they hear the word cancer, it's like, that's it, my life is over, there isn't anything else. But that's not how it's supposed to be. I mean, it's not something that you're going to enjoy, but you shouldn't have this feeling of doom and gloom, right? That this is the end of my life, there's nothing else for me. So that's one takeaway I can share with somebody else, right? Don't be this doom and gloom and it's the end of your life. It's not the end of your life, right? Don't make cancer your life. It's something you may have to deal with, but it should not be your life.
Ricardo, one of the things that I like a lot in the way that Camille has approached, her diagnosis and her treatment is that she always maintains a positive face. So, like even in all the interactions, like she's there, she's chatting with the other patients, she's chatting with the nurses. You do have good days, you have bad days as well. Mm-hmm. But with Camille, you could never really tell. You can't tell. And that's okay. Some patients handle it like that. And then some other patients, they have to show their bad days, and that's completely okay too. But, one of the big things that stood out for me with regard to Camille is her empowerment. Like to me, she was just so in charge of her treatment, she was in charge of her life. And even though we're the ones giving advice, you could tell that she just owned all of it. She just owned the entire experience. And like I swear to you, she could write a book and it would have been amazing.
Thank you for all those high praises. You're making me blush. You're making me blush.
I think I have the AC on too hard because my eyes is because yeah, Aaron, Aaron, you were gonna say something earlier.
That's your anyway. Get out, huh? Don't be afraid to let it out.
Yeah.
And he's wearing pink. So it takes a strong man to wear pink.
Thank you. I've often told Aaron he needs to, come out of his shell and try more, vibrant colors and embrace. No? Yeah. So,
I feel like we had the same argument last year, though.
Just letting you all know that pink is my favorite color.
Okay.
All right.
I did say that last year as well. See, Ricardo doesn't pay attention here.
Yeah, thank you.
Tell you.
But I must openly say that I admire the relationship that you both have. I must echo that sentiment which Ricardo said earlier, because a lot of when it comes to that like that, when they go to the doctor and they get that diagnosis for whatever it may be, as Camille would have said, it comes across very clinical and cold at times. But to know that, Nazarene, that you are building a relationship with the patient, talking to them, letting them know along the step of the way, allowing them to feel, it makes the journey a lot easier.
A lot easier. Yes, it does. It makes it a lot easier.
Because And you said it, Camille, even if you have that diagnosis, you are still a human being. You still have to continue to live.
Mm-hmm.
So the mental trauma of living with cancer is just as much a strain as the actual
Diagnosis.
disease itself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I want to just ask this question here. At the different clinics, is there access to, we know that early detection is very important, right, in treating with breast cancer as well as any other cancer. But is there also, beside the early detection, the treatments and counseling? How does that part shape up?
So how we can do this is that I can tell you, like, from the doctor's perspective, and Camille can talk a bit about the patient's perspective, because I think what happens as well is that a lot of times the mechanisms that are in place are not really, I think, we need to trim off this show now. I mean, really, did you not burn that cup as yet? Sorry. Lost my train of thought there.
This is why. Favorite episode.
Mm-hmm. So, I think we implement things in the clinics, but a big part of that is also the patients accessing that. And a part of the patients accessing it is also, one, the patients knowing that it's there, but also the patients sometimes needing to say, I need this, and do you have someone who can help me? So one of the big things that, let's start from the beginning, because one of the big things is diagnosis. And, basically the diagnosis for breast cancer is very simple. We have screening mammograms. Basically, it's recommended for every woman over the age of 40 to have an annual screening mammogram. There are many patients who don't like having screening mammograms for a multitude of reasons, one of them being that it's painful, it's uncomfortable.
It's painful.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and also that they're scared. So that's one of the big things. A lot of patients are scared. The more worrisome thing is that if you don't have a screening mammogram and you feel a lump, then you need to get that checked out, because there are patients who have lumps in their breasts for many, many years, and then they don't seek treatment. Now, that's the first step. And mammograms are available widely through the public and the private sector. And it's, especially if you present with a lump, if you're not having a screening mammogram and you present with a lump, it's something that's dealt with urgently. So any patient who has a lump in their breast can access a mammogram in the public sector very easily. Camille, I don't know if you can talk a little bit about your experience of diagnosis. So just before we go on to that, after the mammogram is done, if the mammogram shows that there's something suspicious, what we normally do is have a biopsy done. Again, any patient who has a suspicious mammogram in the public or the private sector, biopsy is readily available, and we usually expedite that. So, again, the take-home point, I think, from my perspective as a doctor, to tell patients is that if you feel a lump, especially even if you're not having a screening mammograms, you feel a lump, there's nipple discharge, anything bloody, the texture of the skin is changing, it looks like an orange, it's different, then you need to get that checked out as soon as possible. Yeah, Camille?
From my experience, all of those symptoms that Dr. Bhim just expressed, I did not get any of those symptoms. I was going merrily along, living my life. I had never had a mammogram before for those same reasons. You hear people saying it's so painful and, So I had never done one. And in December 2017, I was watching television and my right hand happened to pass just below the armpit area and I felt a button. There was no lump, no discharge, no changing of color. All of these symptoms that you just expressed, I did not see any of those. I saw a button. So what did I do? I started to cream it. And I am just there creaming this button because that's what you do with a button. But then by January, February 2018, I noticed that around the button began to get hard. Still, I'm not thinking that it is cancer. I'm using antibiotic cream now, and I'm still going along. It wasn't until near the end of February that year that I started to get some sensation around that particular area, around the button-like thing. And that's when I went and I got it tested. I had a mammogram done. And soon after the mammogram, they called me in to do a biopsy. And that was a little bit scary, but still, I'm not thinking that it is cancer. I'm still thinking, well, it is something they can deal with, maybe something they can drain. I'm still not thinking that it is cancer. And when the doctor called me back and gave me results and confirmed that it was cancer. So my takeaway is, I was also a person who never really used to do much self-examination. So my takeaway is that we as women have to do that, the self-examination. We have to know when to start the mammograms. And I'm seeing research saying that now mammograms can be started even earlier. Before they used to say it was at age 50, then 45, then 40. Now they are saying in their 30s, women can begin to have their mammograms, especially if you have a family history of breast cancer. So, but at least I am always thankful that I went and I got that checked. So, my diagnosis was stage 2B breast cancer.
So just to touch on what Camille just mentioned. So typically for patients who do have a positive family history, screening is recommended to start usually 10 years before the diagnosis of the person, the family member who is diagnosed. So for example, if you have a mom who is diagnosed at the age of 42, then we normally recommend screening to start at the age of 32. And because of the density of the breast, it's not always possible to do an MRI, a mammogram in patients who are less than 40 because the results might not be very conclusive. So in younger patients, sometimes we use MRIs and ultrasounds. So typically, as a screening tool, for all women in general, we use the age of 40. And of course, if you do have a family history, a positive family history, then that age could get a bit lower. And, again, just to bring back in the point that Camille mentioned, that, being self-aware, like being able to say, okay, this is something abnormal that I haven't felt before, and really knowing when it's time to go see someone to have
and get it checked.
Yeah, so you don't sit at home. What we don't want that. We don't want patients sitting at home with lumps for a year, for 2 years, because then that's when it becomes a problem. That's when it becomes diagnosed at a stage that's late, that we can't really do great things. But when it is that we're able to diagnose patients, especially with stage 1, stage 2, and even stage 3 cancers, then the outcomes are much, much better. So early detection definitely plays a big role in us being able to treat cancers in a curative way.
Yeah, that I can agree with.
Now, there's something I want to just touch on, and it's a marrying of the both of mental health and cancer awareness, breast cancer awareness, right? And this one is to you, Camille. I know this isn't something that we would have preempted you about, but it's just something that I want to ask as we have someone here. In terms of the journey, can you talk a little bit about it with us?
From diagnosis?
Yeah.
Okay. I was, as I said, I only observed the button.
Yeah.
There were no signs, no symptoms, no lump, no discharge, all of the usual signs for breast cancer. And as I said, mine came up looking like a button until I began to get a sensation around the button. And that's when I went and I got tested. As I said, my mammogram, they did a biopsy, and then the doctor confirmed the diagnosis for me. I can't say that I felt scared. As I said, I had some other medical issues before. So to me, that was just one other thing. And I think the nurses in the office were a little surprised, because I think a lot of people cry and they bawl. And I was just like, what else, Lord? Right? This is just one other thing. However, on my way back home in the afternoon, I think when it sank in, that was when I broke down. And I still didn't ask why me, right? I still did not ask why me. to me, it was just one other thing. I got home, I let it sink in the night, and then the following morning, I said, okay, this is one other thing. What do we do now? And I just had to wait until the doctor prepared a plan for me. So initially, he told me my plan would have been surgery. I chose to do a lumpectomy. And he told me with my type of breast cancer, it would have been chemo and radiation. So I just prepared myself for the surgery, which was the first part. And I took everything step by step. I didn't look forward or worry, this is going to happen, that is going to happen. And I'm a person, I like to know. So I hit the internet, not social media, the internet. I Googled everything. I looked up my specific type of breast cancer because I am triple negative. So I looked it up. I tried to get as much medical information on it. And the first step, as I said, was a lumpectomy. I did research on that. Everything I did research on step by step. I looked up what to do before lumpectomy, what to expect after a lumpectomy. All of that I looked up. I started to see a lot of words like aggressive and low survival rate. Those are the type of words that I was coming across. And I said, no, those are just words, right? And I said, no, I'm not going to be in that low survival rate. I'm going to be in the high survival rate, right? So because the 5-year survival rate for triple negative breast cancer is about 91%. And that's if it hasn't spread anywhere other than the breast, right? So I put all of those negative words out of my mind. And I think I contributed that to my belief, right? So one must have belief in something. If it's a higher power, whatever religion you belong to, you must believe in something, right? So, and I started to pray. I said, pray can conquer all. I started to pray. And I took everything step by step after the lumpectomy. I was referred to the public sector. And I remember when I saw the oncologist, he was very matter of fact, very cold. And he just kind of told me, well, okay, you will start chemo and radiation. And just matter of factly, one thing with chemo, you will lose all your hair. And I remember sitting in the office and said, but doc, you said that so calmly, but what do you expect me to say? That was his response. I said, okay, right? And I left his office. And that's why I said some doctors are very clinical when they give you the information. And I mean, the surgery wasn't scary. They were very nice. And I just did, I took control of my issue, right? As I said, I went and I did all of my research and I put everything there in a filing cabinet, saved as, and I did everything step by step. I chose personally to go alternative medicine. So in addition to the Western medicine, which would be the chemo and radiation, I chose to do alternative treatments. So for instance, I changed my diet completely, right? Again, I did research for the alternative diet for my type of breast cancer. Everything I did, I researched it for my specific type of breast cancer. And I changed my diet completely, which now included fruits, vegetables, smoothies, no flour, no sugar. That's one thing I learned with breast cancer, because cancer loves sugar. So I had to come off of sugar. I let flour go. And I learned to love smoothies. It's not as bad as people think, right? But I learned to love smoothies. But I took control and I read I read what to eat, what not to eat. Stress, I had to learn to let stress go, right? Because I was a person, I used to be very meticulous. You know, if I had something on the left and you took it from there, make sure you put it back on the left. But no, I really don't care. I learned to let a lot of things go. And then now I sit and I realize, but how come I couldn't let those things go before? Those things weren't very important, you know, and to me, I look at things that we make important. Now I look at them as not really being important. So I learned to let a lot of stuff go. And it's a little more stress-free, right? It's a little more stress-free. Stress is another thing. When you're going through your cancer journey, you cannot deal with stress on top of everything else. So we have to learn how to deal with stress. So I let a lot of things go. I try not to get agitated too much now. This is post-treatment now, right? So if I'm in a situation where I feel that an argument is going to erupt out of that, I shut it down, right? I shut it down, right? So I try to live very calmly. If I'm listening or looking at something and it begins to aggravate me, I change the channel, right? I try not to be aggravated too much. I'm not saying I don't get angry or it works all the time, but I try my best not to let it affect me too much.
Now, the question that we would have really wanted to say is, where's the hope, right? But I wanted to take it from a different angle of getting a bit of the journey.
You have to own it. And the one thing I learned through my experience, no offense, Dr. Bhim, but to me, doctors don't marry diet with treatment. To me, when they tell you about the treatment, that's it. That's it on their end. They did their part. That's how it came across to me. And I asked him, I said, so can I take, multivitamins while I'm doing chemo? If you want. That was his response. So I took charge. I took charge of myself, right? I did my treatment, which was the Western medicine, because that is most important. I'm not saying disregard that. I did my treatment, what was laid out to me, but I took charge. As I said, I did my research, what I can take, what I couldn't take, how much of it. And it may sound like a cliche, but it doesn't have, cancer doesn't have to be this doom and gloom. It doesn't have to be scary, right? We put a lot of things in our mind. We do put a lot of things in our mind. I remember my first chemo session. From what I had read, they said, okay, expect this and expect to be vomiting and expect nausea and, And I remember coming out of the room and, okay, that wasn't too bad, right? And, but in the night was when it hit me. I didn't feel nausea, but I felt extremely tired. And I had to get up to go to the bathroom every minute, which I'm not accustomed to, because when I lie down to sleep, right? And I had to be getting up every minute to go to the bathroom. And about this one in particular was traumatic for me. Now, I had been a hair relaxer for years. So my hair was long, just below my shoulders. And my hair was my pride and joy. And 2 weeks after my first chemo session was my birthday. And I decided to try and go out to dinner. And I remember getting ready. And when I passed the comb through my hair to comb it, almost all of the hair came out into the comb, into my hand. And I just stood up watching it because I didn't know what to do, right? I just didn't know what to do. And I mean, I'm getting ready to go out. So I stood up watching it. A few tears came down and I just fixed my makeup. I kind of, fluffed up where became bald and I went out. And about 2 days later after that, I asked my friend to come and shave me bald. Losing the hair was very traumatic for me. Some people may feel chemo is traumatic, but losing my hair was my trauma, right? That was my trauma, losing my hair. I still have it in a little Ziploc bag because I saved it. But the bald head wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
And that's funny because today the trauma was that you have to comb your hair for this segment.
Yes. Yes. Yes, because I'm so accustomed now that the hair is growing back. I don't think I'll be going back to relax anymore. I think I'll rock the natural from now on. But it just takes a lot getting used to for me. Because even when my head was as bald as a baby's butt, I still, again, researched what to do, how to treat your bald head while going through chemo. So I covered it a lot because I never wanted people in the public eye to see my bald head. So the first thing I did was went to the store and bought like 6 scarves, different colors, right? So I tied my head a lot. I didn't want anybody in the public eye to see me with my head bald. And if I was home and somebody came outside, I used to run and cover it up, tie it up, right? I never wanted anyone to see me like that. But I still took care of my head, right? That doesn't mean because your head is bald that you don't take care of it. I still took care of it. And when the hair began to grow back after finishing the chemo, it was nice and smooth, right? But now it's just nice and curly. So for me, because I haven't had natural hair for so long, for me, it's taking a little getting used to. Yes, right? During the treatment, there were days when I was so sick and in so much pain. Now, I had 8 sessions of chemo. And with the first 4, with that medication, I got a lot of stomach cramps. And I'm talking, I used to feel like if my stomach was coming from the inside, coming out. A lot of stomach cramps. And again, I hit the net to see what could be done to ease those cramps. And I found hot water helped. So I had a hot water bottle and I used to hug it up in a towel. And that used to help the cramps. The second 4 sessions, I got joint pain. So I could hardly stand on the sole of my feet. My feet got very, very sore. So I used to stand on the side of my feet. I couldn't stand flat-footed. And my knees, my elbows, all my joints were hurting. There was a certain time I used to walk with a stick, right? Because I was in so much pain. But thank God I got through that. As Dr. Bhim said, there were good days and bad days. There were some days when the stomach pain was so bad. I just used to lie down and cry. But, I never said, Lord, this is it now. I can't make it. Take me now. That was never a thought for me, right? That was never a thought for me. There are good days. There are bad days. I think after the 3rd session, I was sick of being sick. Because to me, like I was always sick. I always felt sick. Thank God I never felt the nausea because they gave us enough medication to take care of that. Right? So I never felt the nausea, but it was the pain. The pain was severe.
As you,
but
No, sorry. No, I was wondering if, as you brought up the medication and the treatment. So I don't know if we could just sorry to cut you off, but I want to
No,
segue
it's fine.
into Dr. Bhim. If you could tell us a little bit about the types of treatment that would be available or would have been administered, because
Sure.
I'm curious because I heard you mention. No, let's put it this way: for the people who don't know, chemo is separate from radiation.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned
I am people.
you yes, Aaron, you are people.
Sure. So, just listening to what Camille said, I think definitely, like, sometimes research is good because research helps patients to understand more about what's going on. So I always tell my friends that sometimes, like, currently I have patients who walk up to me and say, I heard that you all have a trial for XYZ and I want to be on that trial. Or I want to know, I've come here today because I've heard about proton therapy and I want to know if proton therapy is better for me than photon therapy. And all of that is radiation. And these are patients who, they get online, they read, and, everybody has different types of coping mechanisms. And one of the coping mechanisms, is definitely internalizing information, being able to read and understand. And I always feel like that's a really good coping mechanism because it helps patients along their journey. And, it also helps with, really just understanding the side effects of everything. But, for Camille, I think a big part of it as well is establishing a good relationship with your doctor to the point where it is that you're able to say, hey, I'm having this side effect. What can you do for me for this? And I think, sometimes from what Camille has described, maybe because of the fact that there wasn't that kind of relationship, she felt like she had to rely a lot more on researching for herself because she felt maybe that she mightn't have been getting that support. But I feel that, sometimes you can really initiate that conversation because not everything that you read sometimes might be valuable because of the fact that it's such a diverse disease. And Camille mentioned earlier that she was triple negative. So based on that, also that the type, but she said, I read that the type of breast cancer that I have, XYZ. And, that's a great point. Now, there are different types of breast cancers. So let's start there. So there are different types of breast cancers. Breast cancers, they express a receptor. There are 3 receptors that we mainly look at for all breast cancers: the ER, which is an estrogen receptor, PR, which is a progesterone receptor, and something called HER2, which is basically a growth factor. So patients who lack all these 3 receptors are called triple negative, and patients who are who may have the estrogen and the progesterone receptors positive, they are called hormonal positive. Whereas people who have the HER2 receptor positive, they are called HER2 positive breast cancers. They are called HER2 positive in terms of their cancer. Now, Camille had her treatment, and again, back in 2017, when she was initially diagnosed, that's when her treatment paradigm would have started. Now, basically, cancer treatment evolves rapidly. I always tell people that if I don't open my iPad for 1 week, when I do open my iPad, I have to update all my guidelines because that's how fast oncology changes. Now, there are certain types of cancers where the primary treatment upfront is not surgery. Triple negative breast cancers and HER2 positive breast cancers, currently the guidelines are for chemotherapy upfront before you even have a surgery. There are other types of cancers where surgery upfront is recommended. So even, for example, patients who have large breast masses and are interested in saving the breast, in reducing the size of the breast or how they can conserve the breast, in those patients, we also recommend chemotherapy upfront. So one of the take-home messages is that care is being individualized to patients based on multiple factors: patient factors, their age, patients' mobility, their activity levels, their medical comorbidities, general fitness, as well as the tumor factors, the molecular markers that the tumors express. And based on that, we determine whether the patient needs to receive surgery upfront, chemotherapy upfront. Now, my general way of describing this is the same all the time. I tell this to all my patients. So I'm sure if anyone's listening who has interacted with me before, they've heard this analogy. The breast cancer is considered, or any cancer for that matter, as a bee's nest. So surgical removal of a cancer is removal of the whole nest. Whenever you remove the nest, there's always these individual bees that may go and build back a nest either in the same spot, or they go to different branches in the tree and they build nests in those spots. Chemotherapy is like insecticide. It gets rid of all the bees everywhere that might be looking to build nests anyway. Radiation therapy is like if it is that you were to cut off the one branch of the tree so that the bees can't build back the nest where they were before. Radiation therapy is localized treatment to the site of cancer to reduce the chances of it coming back in the same place. Whereas chemotherapy reduces the chances of the cancer spreading to other organs. For most patients who have breast cancer, their treatment will involve chemotherapy, surgery, and radiation. Every patient who has breast conservation surgery, as Camille described, a lumpectomy, needs to have radiation treatment. Now, even over recent times, because of these molecular markers, patients who are ER positive, there are certain factors that we look at. And in some of those women, there has been evidence that shows that some of them don't benefit from chemo and actually only need to have hormonal therapy. So you might find that now we have women who could forego chemotherapy completely, and hence their treatment will entail either surgery plus or minus radiation and hormonal therapy. These are the patients who are estrogen positive, estrogen receptor positive. So one of the really important things in terms of the journey with diagnosis is that you have a mammogram, you have a biopsy done. And when that biopsy is done, it's very, very important to get the results of what we call immunohistochemistry, to get the results of those 3 receptors before making a decision on whether the best option for you is a surgery or chemotherapy. Because as I said, there are patients who benefit from having chemotherapy upfront instead of having a surgery upfront. Okay. I just also wanted to touch on 2 other things that that Camille mentioned, and I made my little notes on the side. So if you see me looking at the side, typically the chemotherapy regime that we would use, there are 2 schedules for it. So it's usually roughly a 3-week regime, a combination of 2 drugs for most patients, a combination of 2 drugs that we give every 3 weeks for 4 cycles, followed by another single drug that we can give either 3 weekly for 4 cycles, which totals to 12 weeks, or 12 weekly cycles of that chemotherapy. Camille made a really, really good point about alternative care. Now, a lot of patients, they read a lot of everywhere, and there's a lot of data coming out and recommendations about alternative medicine. As a physician, you can't ignore that, because if you ignore that, patients are going to do it anyway. They're just not going to tell you anything.
Right.
You can't ignore it. You need to deal with it and you need to address it. Me personally, as Camille said, the Western medicine is the medicine and the information that we have data for. That's where we have the information published. That's where we have trials being run. So we know that the Western medicine works in a certain way. Yeah. Unfortunately, we don't have data for alternative medicine. And I do see many patients who have only alternative medicine and they have bad outcomes. They come to me with disease that I can't fix, So for me, as she said, Western medicine, because we know that it's going to work, or at least has a higher chance of working because there's data for it. If you do want to try alternative medicine on the side, that's completely okay. In some cases, once it doesn't interact with the drugs that you're having.
The Western medicine, that's correct.
Yeah, because sometimes it can interact with some of the chemotherapy drugs and the pre-medication and take-home medications that we give surrounding the chemo to help with the side effects. So it's also important to ensure that your doctor knows which one of those drugs that you're taking so that it's not interacting as well with the traditional medicine that we're prescribing. And, one of the myth busters of all times is the role of sugar in causing cancers. Now, I'm a non-believer. Okay, so basically, I always tell, and Camille and I have had this discussion over and over in my office, and I see I have not gotten through to her, and with regard to the sugars, now, it's so important for patients to maintain a healthy body. And one of Camille's biggest strengths, I think, again, is coming back to the fact that she said she changed her diet. She incorporated fruits and vegetables and, a lot of healthy eating that before she really didn't focus so much on. And I think that healthy eating is a very important part of oncology care and oncology treatment altogether. Because when you're going through chemo, basically chemo affects your good cells as well as your bad cells, and your body needs to rebuild. Your body needs energy and proteins to rebuild. If you don't take in sufficient amount of carbohydrates and sugars, then your body uses all the other, building blocks in your body, such as the protein for energy, and then it can't use the protein to rebuild the body. So I don't recommend not having sugar. I don't recommend cutting out sugar completely. In fact, there are even patients that I recommend that they should drink Coke to keep their body weights up during the radiation treatment, because if they have like a lot of difficulty eating and I need to keep their body weight up for radiation purposes so that, if they have masks that it fits properly, I recommend that they have a bit of soda to help keep their weight up. So, sugar does have its role. Everything in moderation. So
everything in moderation.
Yeah. So I'm not a believer in cutting out sugars completely. And several patients, that's probably the most common question that I'm asked about diet. Doc, can I eat sugars? And the answer is yes, you can eat sugars, because sugar is a regular part of the diet, and it does have its role in providing energy. And it's an easy source of energy. When your sugars are used for energy, then your body could use the other nutrients in your diet to rebuild itself. Because chemo is rigorous, and Camille will tell you that even after
it is rough.
Yeah,
it takes very rough.
A long time, to really get back to your baseline self. And, as I said, we had the conversation earlier today, what am I going to do with my hair? But it's, a big part of it as well. And for me, like when I think about it, and I feel like, the reason being is that my mom also was diagnosed with breast cancer. And, I think the loss of the hair, it hits something wrong on the inside. It's the one thing that people could see. Anybody, if they look at you, they can see, okay, something's not completely right, whereas you can hide everything else. And I think that's one of the big reasons why that one thing really hits home with most patients. And I think one of the big things, as Camille mentioned, throughout her encounter and her experience, is really that it's not only one thing, but you have so many different facets to that experience. And it's about diet, it's about support, it's about, making sure
having
you have
hope.
The right treatment. But, yeah, definitely.
Having hope.
Yeah.
It's not doom and gloom, and it's not the end. It really, what we have to keep in the back of our mind is that cancer, it does not mean the end.
And
that's one thing. It doesn't mean the end.
And honestly, that was really the message. Like that's one of the things I feel like Camille just was so full of hope for her entire treatment. And part of that, there's so many factors that play into that. And it all comes back to the same thing, understanding that it's not the end. So when you feel that lump, okay, here what? I'm going to get this checked out, because it's not the end of the world if I get diagnosed. And if I get diagnosed earlier, then it's better for me, because I can get started with my treatment and I can...
Earlier.
Yeah.
I just want to say we are probably close to cutting into Mr. Desmond's time. And he probably WhatsApping me right now, telling me, hey, it's that time, big man. Right? So I want to extend that we could continue this conversation another week. We don't know if it's next week, but we have to do a really quick follow-up to this, because there's a lot of, we just scratched the surface. And
people hungry for information now, and people scared. So to see this type of relationship, to hear this type of contribution, you're getting the professional perspective, you're getting the I'm a survivor perspective, and to see all both, so is almost a harmony in this discussion.
It's very moving.
Yeah, I wish we had more time this week to continue the conversation, but definitely we would like to do a quick follow-up with you guys.
Yeah. I want to say thank you, Nazreen and Camille. Thank you very much for joining us. We know Ricardo didn't pick you all first, but it's cool.
It was a different topic.
We want to thank you all for joining us inside the living room this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for having us as well, and also for just letting us share both sides of this journey. You know, it's all of us involved in it. You know, and I want
That's
people
it.
to know, yeah, that it's not just you. You know, we're walking beside you, so it's both of us. We're both involved in this journey.
Normally, we extend opportunity for closing remarks, but honestly, this is not a, well, we'll pick this up in a couple months type of conversation. This is a, I'm going to be on the phone with you guys way sooner than that to schedule this part too.
So this is not stop. We ain't pressing stop. We pressing pause.
This is a
Pause.
It's a pause,
Okay,
right?
it's a pause.
And
Aaron will probably have on the same jersey in the next episode anyway, so.
no,
As long as he get rid of the cup, it's
cup.
fine.
right? So, you know, we want to thank you all as we wrap up. So, Ricardo, do the needful really quickly because the phone ringing, you know what that means.
Well, this is yours truly, Ricardo Mitchell, the social stage and the local stage. Thanking you for joining us in the living room. Remember, guys, the hourglass is opaque. We don't know how much time remains, so whatever you're doing, be good and stay safe. Aaron?
And this is yours truly, DJ Aaron 868. I am always great and I'm never late. I remind you that love is the currency, so spend some today. All right? Keep it locked. Up next is Mr. Desmond with the big band.